probably good morning for you guys. It's Miss Slater. I'm coming to you guys to talk about cellular respiration and make sure you're understanding it. So, I've shared this with you guys so you can use it, but I just wanted to explain this process. So, remember, both plants and animal cells and protists and fungus and some bacteria go through the process of cellular respiration. And the whole purpose is to take glucose, so food, and once we have broken that food down into glucose, converting that glucose into ATP. Now, we start with glucose, and it comes from the food that is consumed in our diets. That will be then converted into pyruvate. Here, we're going to create two 3-carbon molecules called pyruvic acid. And this process of breaking down glucose into pyruvate is called glycolysis. So if you click here, it's going to take you to this information. So glyco meaning glucose and lysis meaning cutting or slicing. So we are cutting our 6-carbon molecule down into 2 3-carbon molecules. This does occur in the cytoplasm, and oxygen is not required. So this is the first step in cellular respiration, and it can be anaerobic or aerobic depending on which way it's going to go. So here we're going to produce 2 pyruvic acids, 2 NADHs, and 2 ATP. So you'll see that on our diagram here. We end up with 2 net ATP, and we'll end up with 2 NADHs that are going to end up going to the very end. Next, we take pyruvate. Pyruvate is going to be broken down into acetyl-CoA. This is pyruvate oxidation. We need this to be broken down first in order for the Krebs cycle to actually begin. So this process is a precursor or a prerequisite to the Krebs cycle. The pyruvate molecule is going to be prepared to enter this cycle by first being converted into the coenzyme acetyl-CoA. So again, we call this the pyruvate oxidation. So it's a prep step. So we don't always consider it a step of cellular respiration, but it's a part of the Krebs cycle. It's like a precursor. Here, pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA. And then we also end up with carbon dioxide as a byproduct, which is what we breathe out. And then some more NADHs are produced. So 2 more NADHs will be produced. So at this point, we should have 4 NADHs going to the next cycle. Again, CO2 will diffuse into the blood from our cells, and it will make its way to the lungs, and then we will expel it as waste during exhalation. And we end up with 2 ATP. So here, acetyl-CoA is going to go to the Krebs cycle. In the Krebs cycle, we are going to convert acetyl-CoA into NADH and FADH2. And the whole purpose of creating these guys is to have electron carriers. The more electrons we have, the more energy we can make. So we want a lot of electron carriers. So in the Krebs cycle, it's going to occur twice. It occurs once for each pyruvic acid. So really, when we have a 6-carbon molecule being broken down into 2 3-carbon molecules, now we got to break those 3-carbon molecules down into acetyl-CoAs. Those acetyl-CoAs then have to be broken down. This is going to occur in the mitochondrial matrix. This is aerobic, so it requires oxygen. So any type of anaerobic respiration cannot occur at all at this point because this step does require oxygen. And it requires oxygen so we can produce electron carriers, NADH and FADH2, 2 ATP, and carbon dioxide. So now we're going to take our electron carriers, NADH and FADH2, and they're going to go to our lovely electron transport chain so we can pump out a lot of energy. So let's talk about this last and final step, the electron transport chain. It's going to use our reactants along with a concentration gradient. It is going to occur in the inner mitochondrial membrane. It does require active transport and diffusion of our molecules, and it does require oxygen. This is the most efficient way to produce ATP, and it is going to produce 34 ATP and water. So at this point, we're going to have 36 to 38. Now, the numbers look like they add up to 38, but we technically use some of the ATP through this process, especially in the electron transport chain. So we may only end up with 36 ATP overall, instead of 38 because of the use of some of the ATP during the electron transport chain when active transport is being used. And then we have the byproduct water, which water is a normal component of many organisms, including humans. It will either be incorporated into the cell or to diffuse to other parts of the body, depending on what is necessary. So again, this is cellular respiration. There are two different types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. Going through this whole process is aerobic respiration. Anaerobic, you still go through glycolysis, then you skip this whole part in the mitochondria and you go straight to fermentation. The two types of fermentation are alcoholic fermentation, which we did that with our grapes, or lactic acid fermentation. And this is what happens in your muscles when you are oxygen depleted. Again, if you have any questions, please email me since I am not there with you guys.